doesn't do it, it's likely affordable. And this is where politics
benefit for their
I'm Miranda Daniloff-Mancusi. From the Harvard School of Public Health, this is ACA This Week. I'm here with John Mcdonough. John helped write the ACA, so he's truly an expert on the law. John was a senior advisor on national health reform to the U.S. Senate Committee on Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions, and he is now a professor of public policy here at the school. John, welcome. We are beginning to hear something called a risk corridor, in reference to what some are calling the Obamacare bailout. What exactly is a risk corridor?
So a risk corridor is a technical term very commonly used in the insurance industry, health insurance, all kinds of insurance, that provides a protection for insurance companies when they get into a new and unpredictable market to ensure that they won't suffer losses of a large enough measure that it would prevent them from entering the market or have them price their premiums too highly. So we've created a new market in health insurance through the ACA and through the exchanges, and we don't allow insurance companies to rate individuals based upon your medical history. And so that is new and that's unpredictable. And health insurance companies, even though they're in the business of risk, tend to be fairly risk averse and conservative. And so entering a new market, they have a tendency then to say, we're going to have to rate the premiums very highly. And so by creating risk corridors, and we have a diagram from the American Academy of Actuaries that illustrates it quite nicely how it actually works. So with a risk corridor, we say, if you as an insurer are going to suffer higher losses than you expected, then we will have a subsidy from other insurance companies that will modify and lessen your losses. You'll still have some losses, but not as much as you would have had without the corridor. And similarly, if you do unexpectedly well and you have much lower risk than you expected, then you're going to have to pay some of those gains back to subsidize the losers. And we do this over a 3-year period. And it's a very common feature. In 2003, we created the Medicare prescription drug program under a Republican president and a Republican-controlled Congress. And that law contains risk corridors in them. In fact, unlike the ACA, where the risk corridors only last 3 years, in the Part D drug program, the risk corridors are there in perpetuity. Similarly, there's risk corridors for the National Flood Insurance Program, the National Anti-Terrorism Insurance Program. So, and I would say, you know, for people who are involved in the policy of the ACA, it's a little bit like saying, I really don't like this car because of the gasket in the car. It's part of the machine, it's part of the engine that makes it function better, but no one really argues about the gaskets in a car, at least except for the mechanics. And so that's why this is surprising. And I guess it's positive that we've gone from arguing about repealing the ACA to defunding it to now we're arguing about risk corridors. And I guess you could say that's a real sign of progress in the conversation around the law.
So I was going to ask you whether Americans should be for or against risk corridors, but it sounds like that's not really the question.
Well, I don't expect we're going to see the formation of a group Americans for risk corridors or Americans against risk corridors, because it's really only a technical piece. But I think what's important to understand is that it's not designed and put in there for the benefit of insurance companies. It's put in there for the benefit of the consumers who are buying health insurance so that the premiums will be much more affordable than they would otherwise be in the absence of the risk corridors. And so that's why I think in general people might now have some appreciation for the fact that they're there, but that's fundamentally not what this law is about, and it's not what the process is about. It's a good thing to have in there, and there's so much more that's much more important.
Thank you, John, for that explanation. And thank you for joining ACA This Week.